one of the coaches that I worked with while my older ones were still little, we worked heavily talking through parenting things. I'm like, hey, am I responding to this the right way? Am I doing this the right way? He used the analogy of, if you're in a business all day, whether you run your own business or whether you're working for somebody else, you're out there using your sword and you're slaying dragons all day. Like that's what success is. Like each job, no matter what you do, should be a definition of success. And when you do that well, if you've got to make the deal, if you've got to deal with people, you're slaying dragons all day long. And he's like, and if we're not careful, we will take that same sword home that we've been slaying dragons with all day and use it on our family.
Welcome to the Skilled Dad podcast. This is the podcast for dads of all seasons to learn the things that they can do and engage so that they can go and equip the next generation for success. Here we sit down with everyday dads just like you to learn from their story, get inspired, and then start getting after it. So we invite you to join in, see what you can take away from this story, and apply to your life on your journey to becoming a skilled dad. Hey guys, and welcome to the Skilled Dad podcast. My name is Zach Reeser. I'm your host, and I'm glad to join us, both on video and on audio. Maybe on the video. We'll see how this turns out. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I'm hopeful for it.
Yeah, I'm hopeful for it too. So this is one of the first video in the Treehouse Studios that continues to be a work in progress for those of you that have been tuning in and listening. Tuning in, that's like an old school word. I'm going to keep using it.
Get to it.
Tuning in and listening to the podcast. But there's no lie here. You've heard Brian talking. You've heard about, not this Brian, another Brian. We'll talk about it later. But this is Treehouse Studios. But I'm thrilled tonight to have my friend Brian Lawrence join us. Brian, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you on the Skilled Dad podcast.
Yeah, it's a joy to be here, man. I'm looking forward to it.
We're going to have fun, like always, and learn about Brian, his story. And I would say, like very so often happens, we've been chatting it up for a solid umpteen minutes.
Yeah.
And all the good stories are not all given, but we've kind of rehearsed them without playing the record, which I love. So I had the opportunity to work with Brian, but not necessarily alongside Brian for a number of years. So we kind of got to know each other a little bit.
We were more than familiar with each other.
Yeah. I like the terminology. More than familiar with each other. But have gotten to know each other more so really over the last several months, both part of a really fun group through LinkedIn that is like, I'm going to call it like LinkedIn Live.
That's fair. Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Out here in Nashville.
It's everyone that's connected kind of within this group all gets together once a month and actually making your social network social.
Yeah.
And everyone there is super creative. And every time I go, it's like, I'm jazzed. I'm ready. I'm pumped for new ideas, new systems, new things that I can do in, whatever businesses that we're involved in. And anyway, I've had a chance to hang out there some too. And
yeah, I'm meeting with a person at the end of this week for some kind of skills and teaching that she's going to show me how to do better in my business too, just because of that.
I love it.
It's going to be great.
It is going to be great. There's a lot of people. So if you're in the Nashville area, check out LinkedIn.
Come on out.
And follow Brian Lawrence, follow me on LinkedIn. Let's all connect, as they say on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And we usually put out, hey, when this is happening. So unintentional plug for the LinkedIn Live. I've just redubbed it. So we'll tell Alicia and all them.
That's fine.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
But Brian has been on an adventure for the last year, especially, and then I would say the last several years, because you are a father of four.
Father of four boys.
All boys.
All boys.
It's going to be good.
All under 8. Yeah.
All under 8.
Yeah.
I've already heard some doozies along the way. So
we joke that we have the most fun house in Middle Tennessee. Just because
I want to see who's going to up the ante. They're like, oh yeah, here we go.
Oh, I mean, if you want to compare and compete, I'll let you win. That's fine. Like I don't need to win this one.
That's fair. You'll have to share the story that you shared with me about your new Water features?
Water feature.
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
house. I don't know if, bring that up a little bit later, but
Yeah.
we'll weave it in there somewhere.
Always something new and exciting.
I love it. That's what being a dad and a parent's all about.
It really is. And learning how to respond appropriately.
Yeah, we're still working on that
Yeah, I
one.
know.
So
It's a muscle to build.
yeah, that's why you're on here.
Yeah.
Bring the wisdom. This is good.
Oh
I get
man.
to ask the questions and just learn from everybody,
Okay.
so it works out that way. But no, I'm pumped to have you here, and I'm gonna go ahead and just ask you that wide open question, which is, hey Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and let's just take it from there.
Let's take it from there. Let's see. A little bit about me. So, like I said, I've got 4 kids. I've got 4 boys, 8, 5, 3, and 10 months here at the end of this month. And we're just rocking and rolling.
Yeah,
We're having a good time with it. My wife and I have been married for 12 years. Her name's Danielle. And we live here, in Middle Tennessee. We're transplants, as most people out here are.
many of people
From
Yep.
the West Coast. We came from Arizona to follow the work that you and I connected before.
Yeah.
And I ran into the GM at a local coffee shop out here the other day. He had moved from Arizona 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
And I looked at him the other day and I was like, people don't really know what to do with you when you say you're from Arizona, do you? He's like, no. Like out here, and for those of y'all that are not in Tennessee, when you say the word California, they give you a funny look. And that's where I grew up, like in Los Angeles for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But when they say I'm from Arizona, they're like, I think we're cool. Like, I think that's fine.
Where did we stand?
Yeah, like
There we go.
I think Arizona's okay. Sure. Great. You're in Arizona.
You're not Chicago. You're not New York. You're not LA or California. What do we do?
Yeah, people have no idea about
Welcome
Arizona.
to Nashville.
So
Everyone's welcome to Nashville, by the way.
Yeah.
But you
so
know,
for 7 years, rather than saying I'm from California, I've said we moved from Arizona.
there you go.
But these days I own my own business from about a year ago.
Yep.
And when people are like, hey, how are things going? It's literally business or kids
Yeah.
right now, or marriage, and it's a great balance, but that's really the things that are taking up the most of my time, and I'm loving it.
Yeah.
But there's not really room for much else right now.
I think that applies to a lot of us. You
Yeah.
got business kids, because when you said 8, 5, 3, and 10 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you doing sports?
No. Oh no. We've heard that once you open that Pandora's box, like you're not shutting it.
Yeah, probably not.
No, we've got the kids in gymnastics. They're in like ninja class right now, but that's about it.
It adds a new element, for sure.
I've heard that it takes up a lot of your time and a lot of your Saturdays and a lot of your nights. And
That's fair. Yeah, it does. But it's fun.
but they're learning,
if
and
you're
it's good.
coaching,
Yeah.
like you're golden.
Yeah.
And
Do you coach?
I have coached. So this is the first season. So we're doing baseball right now. It's about to be done.
Yeah.
This is like the last week. At time of recording. This is the first season in the last 6 seasons that I have not head coached. And for the first half the season, I was like, what do I do with my hands? I don't really know.
What do I do? What am I supposed to be doing here?
I can't quite fully step in. I mean, I
Yeah.
can, and I kind of do. But this season, I think what's been really cool. So yes, I do coach. But there's Peyton's episode. If you go back and listen to Peyton's episode, we talk about some of the coaching pieces. There's a few of them, but sometimes it's a challenge getting others to step in and help.
Mhm.
Like if you're a head coach, you're like, can I please get an assistant coach? Can I get 2 or 3? You're trying to wrangle these kids, and this is the 10U league, so it's like a step above where you'd think that they would be a little more mature. I think my 6-year-olds were a little easier at some points, but we have like 6 guys that are always there, and so it's been a lot of fun, like tag teaming. But it adds a new level. It definitely does. It's
Have you heard of
a
trail
lot
life?
of moving around. I've heard of it, but I don't know that I could speak to it.
It's kind of like a more faith-based Boy Scouts
Okay.
that's coming out here to our area. There's a handful of locations, but one's coming like really close to our house.
Oh, nice.
I did Boy Scouts all growing up.
Yeah, I
So
did too.
my older wants to get into stuff like that. So we're about to kind of jump into that too, which will be a lot of fun.
That'll be a blast.
Yeah. He
No,
wants
that'd
to
be
go
fun.
camping. He wants to go do all this stuff. It's like, we've done that. Let's go do it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Activities are good.
Activities
Team activities are good.
Yes. getting,
So,
well, just like we were talking before we even got started,
yep.
opportunities to learn how to lose well, you
Let's
know,
talk about that for a minute.
like,
Yeah.
oh man, where do you want to start?
Well, so we'll fill everyone else in on what we were talking about,
Yeah.
and just walking through the concept of, um, there's a term out there that others have used: failure isn't fatal. But also the importance of each day. It's like, hey, I'm gonna go and learn something new today, or I'm gonna be facing something new
Yeah.
today that I've never faced before. And I think that's a healthy thing,
There's an
because
opportunity to look at that as exciting. Like, oh my
100%.
gosh, like there is that like scary part of me. So I grew up and I was working in a Starbucks out in San Diego. And
Okay.
I promise this has a point to it. But at one point I looked across, because San Diego's a destination place.
Yeah.
Like people want to go there. And I would talk to people over the bar. Hey, how are you doing? What's going on? And there's a regular that came in and I was like, hey, question of the day. If you weren't going to live here, where would you live? And he's like, I don't want to live anywhere else. Like, no. But I mean, like, it's just fun. Like,
Right.
where would you live? And he's like, I live in San Diego. Why would I go anywhere else? And he stormed out. He wasn't really upset, but that's just his type.
Did he get his coffee at least?
He got his coffee,
Okay,
but
well.
like, there was something about the whole, like, I've got no desire to push outside of where I am.
Yeah.
And there was a part of me that was like, that's a shame. That's really sad.
Yeah.
And I feel that over the years, it's morphed into the same way about learning new things. Like, I love personal growth. I love learning things. And the idea to be challenged on something and to not be good at it. And you want to lose me for an afternoon, it's give me something that I'm almost good at and that I can see myself getting better at, and then just put me in a room with it. Like,
Right.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And there's something about that's driven to me. But when I see my son, my oldest, he's super competitive. And this idea of, if I don't do things the right way, then I'm a failure, or I'm, the perfectionistic tendencies of like, I need to do it the right way. Like, my wife was like, oh man, that's totally from my side. And I was like, but it's from my side too. Like, both of us sit there, and to be able to walk with him and saying like, hey, failure is not, final. Yes, it's true. But it's like, man, what would life be like if we didn't fail? Like, if you just got it all the time, like, where would the challenge be?
Right.
Where would the fun be? If you could just be perfect at everything, like, one, it's not possible. There was only one person that's perfect, and it wasn't you or me. But two, like, there's nothing to aim at.
Right.
And it's been a slow and steady, like we were talking about that John Maxwell, like, sometimes you learn, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn
Yeah.
book. And it's a tough pill to swallow. I mean, even for, Danielle, my wife, and I looked at each other today, like, we're the adults that we remember growing up. Like, it's us now. Like, we've got the children, and we've got a family and a house. Like, we're those adults. Like, we're the same age as our parents. And that was just weird.
It's super weird.
Isn't it weird?
Yeah.
Like,
It absolutely is.
and now you're teaching kids lessons, and you're talking about being a dad. Like,
Yeah.
we're those adults.
Not only are we talking about being a dad, we're talking about being a dad of 4.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're not even necessarily like new dads.
At our church that we go to, like, my wife is now one of the older moms, not old age, but like that has the most kids.
Yeah.
And when all these, like, people with 1 or 2 kids, which, by the way, if you're a parent of 1 or 2 kids, that's still a lot of work. So that's not demeaning anything. But they'll look at her and be like, oh my gosh, 4 kids. And we're like, I mean, yeah.
Let's come back to that one, because
Yeah.
we're finding ourselves in a similar position where people ask, was it harder from 1 to 2, 2 to 3?
When
I
we
don't
get
know
there, I've
about-
got a story for that.
Yeah, let's get there. But as going back to the failure piece, right? Let's say that anybody that's listening, watching, whatever here is about to be a dad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if you can kind of go back to that point for yourself, when before you had all 4, all the things you know now, all the failures you've had along the way. But maybe they're in a place where, like, I don't even know what I would fail at per se. I mean, you can conjure up some ideas, but what is something maybe that you remember that you could say to that new dad, outside of, hey, don't be afraid to fail? But like, what's something maybe that you experienced that you can think back and say, okay, had I had a podcast or
a manual or a book or something, because there weren't as many when we were having
Oh, for
our
sure.
kids.
Yeah, no.
There's more now, which is cool, but there weren't. What would something be that you would kind of equip them with?
Man, something that it took a lot of heartache for me to fail across and to not feel just like a real piece of work was failure when losing my temper and losing my cool when it came to like, I'm the guy that reads or understands intellectually. I understand like the relational development and the cognitive this and the, you know, what happens when somebody gets big with somebody else, especially from like a child development side of things. So intellectually, I could sit there and be like, that's probably not good if you lose your cool,
Right.
because they don't understand the words, they hear the tone, and it invokes fear in you. And, you know, there's right ways and there's good ways to be able to do that. Well, piece of work over here, many a times would sit there after the fact, kind of reviewing the tape, as it were, and sitting and being like, really?
Yeah.
Like, you just did this? Like, they're 2, they're 3. Like, you were the, what did they say? You know, be a thermostat, don't be the thermometer. Like, don't read the temperature, set the temperature. Like, bro, you were totally a thermometer and you totally elevated to the level, and now you're the child. So for anybody that's listening to this on the front side, one, it would say, like, you don't suck as bad as you think you do if and when you lose your temper. To me, like, my big thing to coming back to, it's not a matter of not losing your temper, which I work on, but it's the, what do you do after?
Yeah.
Like, what I didn't give myself a lot of at the very beginning was grace. And to understand of like, hey, there's a reason that this is a journey. There's a reason that, you know, no 2 dads are the same from like life experiences. No 2 children are the same because they're being raised by different parents. Like, we can listen to principles all day long, but your scenario is going to be so completely and uniquely different. And that's such a good thing.
Yeah.
And I'd say, you know, learning from that and being able to say, like, I'm not a horrible dad, I'm not a horrible person, it just shows me that I've got places that I can grow.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do, you rise to the occasion, and afterward I give my wife a high five and I was like, heck yeah. Yeah, I figured that one out, or that one wasn't quite as bad. And then afterwards, like, we walk into the room and I was like, did it again, you know? So to me, that would be the big thing of like, it's not going to be if, it's going to be when. They're just going to push your buttons, man. Like, you're not dealing with people that are rational with little kids, and you shouldn't expect them to be, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be hard.
Yeah. That's great advice. It's also, you're not alone in that one.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, you can talk to so many people. That actually, as you're talking through that though, one other piece that we had talked about is the relationship between coaching and leading at home and at work.
Yeah.
And so when you said thermostat versus thermometer, you might get a lot of practice if you're leading a team at work or you're part of a team. The same principles apply. What I've found in both for myself and some conversations is that for some reason, when you walk through the home door, it's like the work leader things and all the things that you practice and are taught that you're really, you know, better at kind of go out the window, and you kind of like magically forget some of it. So you have to intentionally remind yourself, okay, thermostat, not thermometer. I know how to do this because I'm doing it on a daily basis. This one's close to home, literally. But the same principles apply.
Well, I'll give you maybe a different way to look at it too. So thermostat and thermometer and how you're responding. But, you know, I worked with, like, as a coach, I work with a coach, and I have for years. And there's been different people that, from, you know, a coach talking about parenting versus a coach that's now helping me with my business, being able to say, hey, there's wisdom in getting counsel, whether mentorship, people that have done it there, or people that can just see what you can't. Well, one of the coaches that I worked with while my older ones were still little, we worked heavily talking through parenting things. I'm like, hey, am I responding to this the right way? Am I doing this the right way? He used the analogy of, you know, if you're in a business all day, whether you run your own business or whether you're working for somebody else, you're out there using your sword and you're slaying dragons all day. Like, that's what success is. Like, each job, no matter what you do, should be a definition of success. And when you do that well, you know, if you've got to make the deal, if you've got to deal with people, you're slaying dragons all day long. And he's like, and if we're not careful, we will take that same sword home that we've been slaying dragons with all day and use it on our family. If we don't have an intentional rhythm, an intentional way to be able to take that, set it up on a shelf outside the back door, to put it up on the hearth, to be able to say, this isn't in use right now.
Yeah.
There's principles, and yes, there's strategy that I've used in the days, things that I'm doing day in and day out. But if I'm not careful, I start to treat my family like somebody that needs to be solved, like the problem at work, rather than somebody to be lived with.
Yeah.
And we can unintentionally use our sword on.
That's a good one.
You know, anyway, that was
No, I like that one a lot.
that was a big eye-opening thing. And he even walked, if for anybody that they're like, oh yeah, I do that too. He literally said a practice was to find a halfway point between where your work was and where home was, whether it was a stop sign, whether it was, you know, the Piggly Wiggly, whatever it would be.
Right. Yeah.
And say, up until this point, I'm okay to think about work. I'm okay to keep slaying dragons and keep making my plan of attack for tomorrow. But as soon as I get to this halfway point, it's now to start flipping the switch and I'm in dad mode. How am I going to receive my kids when I walk in the door? How am I going to be present with my wife? How am I going to ensure that this just doesn't accidentally happen? And he's like, that intentionality, it requires you to make the choice, but be aware that it's a choice to make.
Yeah. That's good. I like that perspective. I don't think I've heard it shared in that way. And there's, all right, let me ask you this on that idea. We're not slaying dragons. We don't also necessarily want to only be fun dad, right? We're still raising knights. If we got boys, we're still raising knights, and we're still, you know, guiding the daughters. So from that perspective, that's where a tricky balance kind of comes into play.
Tricky how?
I think solving problems at work versus the home problems they're two different types of things. So we're not coming in like, what are our KPIs, you know, at home?
Yeah.
We have chore charts. But like,
right. But it's basically, how do you not lose the steam and some of like maybe the structure that you've had in the day, and by just saying like, structure's out the window, I'm back home now.
Right.
Like,
let's just do all things fun and everyone goes crazy. And we're now like in a circus house. Now, if that's how you want to run the house, like that's up to you. But as far as we create the right structures and coaching and discipline where needed and guidance and love, it might be too deep of a philosophical question for this podcast, but, you know, kind of taking that, it's like you hit that halfway point and you switch into dad mode. So like, what's dad mode look like for you?
Dad mode to me, the word that, whether it's any of the work that I do, it feels like intentionality.
Yeah.
Is the thing. And I think it's just a big question of like, what are you being intentional in what you're doing?
Yeah.
And, you know, intentionality is how people progress. It's how they move forward. It's, if you're working at a job, intentionality is going to make sure that you accomplish the stuff. But, you know, at home, if we have, you know, mission statements, if we have things that are, this is about our family, we've been serving somebody else during the day with the work that we do, but now we're serving a different mission. We're serving a different capacity. There's still something about seeing that work be done well, you know, to the extent that like we are on time, we are respectful, we are honoring, you know, we follow Jesus in the things that we do. There's still a way that says like our house needs to stay in order.
Right.
With 4 kids, it can get out of order really quickly. It's insane. How quickly something happens. Like today, I walked into my 3-year-old's room before we even came here, and I looked and I was like, "What happened to your room?" And he's walking around without pants on. Like, where did your pants go? And what happened to your room? Like, it's insane how fast that happens. But the organization of saying, "Hey, you know, we pursue Jesus, we honor our family members, like, you know, we're respectful to our brothers in this case, because we've only got boys. Like we listen to mom and dad as the authority in our home. And when that works well, like our house isn't a mess. And you guys actually, that discipline equals freedom. You have more freedom when we've got more things. So to me, like dad mode is as a total tangent, I didn't answer your question. It's being present.
It was good though. I liked it.
It's putting my dang phone down.
Yeah.
It's, which I could always be better. We're all so connected. It's one of the reasons I'm not on social media. Like, I know that I'm easily distracted from things, and I can very easily be pulled away from my kids for things that are important and things that are, especially as a business owner, going to make money for us, or the things that are going on. And being that intentional dad and being in dad mode means that I've got limited amount of time, yes, but I've got limited amount of opportunity for influence when it comes to my kids. And I was telling you even before we began, like, the story of why I do what I do was born out of seeing people's regret of what they didn't do. And I've heard far too many older guy stories of the regret that they had of, man, if I could do this again, I would spend more time here. I'd put the distraction down. I would prioritize this. I'd do this. And I see, while some days are harder than others, every day is an opportunity to really put a coin in that jar of intentionality.
Yeah.
So to me, that's what dad mode looks like. It's not being perfect. God knows I'm not. But it's the, how do I show up to them in ways that I've witnessed too many other people say that they didn't try doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does it look like for you?
I'm thinking through it. See, this is the hard part. I asked the questions and then I have to think about, like, well, what do I think I'd say? I think it's very similar. It's changed. It's evolved over time, because the first couple of years of my dad mode really wasn't much different.
Oh, it's super reactive the first couple of years. Like, you respond more than you are proactively doing anything.
Well, I mean, first couple of years, baby's growing and it goes fast, and then they're like huge before you know it. And my first couple of years for my firstborn, I was there on the weekends, so totally different. And so dad mode was very different. And then for my second and my third, it has evolved as well. And I think some of that comes with, like, by the time you get to the third kid, I saw a really good, like, coaster somebody made. At some ladies' night I went with my wife. I was literally the only guy in the shopping place. Major points. It was awesome. But it said, you know that you have multiple kids when your child licks something on the ground and then they say, I've seen them lick worse. It's kind of like, you're fine.
Oh, dude,
they're going to be fine.
The more multiples you have, like, I joke that my youngest two are going to have a very different dad than my oldest two had. Like, when we first moved out here, we only had two, and they're all boy all the time. Like, they have one speed and one volume. And we went to the optometrist out in our town at Target, because, that's where we go.
Yeah.
And he had 6 kids or something like that. And he looked at us and said, hey, you've got 2. You're in the hardest throw right now. And it took me a moment. I was like, but you've got 6. What are you talking about? He's like, you get 6, you get the older ones that can help the younger ones. He's like, you've got a toddler, you've got a baby and a bigger baby, which is what toddlers are. He's like, you are in as hands-on a mode as you can.
Yep.
Buckle up. It's going to get better. So to have an optometrist of 6 kids say 2 is the hardest, it was like, all right. I could totally vouch for it. He was totally right.
Yeah, we were going to circle back on that one. And I think we just did. If you're at 2 and you're thinking about 3, go 3.
It's so much better.
3 is like,
oh, for sure. Absolutely.
In our opinions.
And that's the thing.
And I don't know about 4, but 3 is good.
You might be listening or looking at this and saying, you guys are nuts. 2 is a lot. You're totally right. But there is something about okay, here's the experience. The first one is hard because you don't know what you're doing. But the first one gets all of your attention. So the first one, as far as life is concerned, the world is about them. The second one comes along, and the first one might be, depending on your spacing, the first one's a bigger baby. That's fine, but a bigger baby that expects the lives to still be about them. So when you give your attention to the second one, the first one's going to be like, what's the deal? And that's going to create all sorts of stuff. So the baby's being a baby, and the bigger one's like, this is the wrong attention I should be getting. And then finally, when the third one comes along, the second one's like, I've been here before. It's never been just me. The first one's getting their act together by realizing, okay, I've seen this before.
I'm leading this troop.
And the third one is none the wiser that there's ever been such a thing as only one child.
Right.
And then the fourth one is like crawling around the floor at dinner time, which is what happened tonight. Like, little Samuel, he's just doing his best. He's great, but he'll just be crawling around and find stuff, and we're like, don't put that in your mouth.
Don't do that.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, while you're leaning back.
Yeah. Like, is he? Yeah, he's cool.
We're gonna-
Yeah, he's fine. Yeah, he's okay.
We're going
It's
to
all
create
right.
the silhouette of progression as a parent. First child, no. Second child, no. Third child,
Eh,
fourth child, you'll be okay.
that'll be fine.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
That'll be fine. Somebody else go grab that out of his mouth. Great. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. They'll be okay, guys. They'll be okay. So if you're thinking 2 to 3, my vote sounds like Brian's vote is take the leap. 3's good.
Yeah.
And
He's
if
with
you're
them too.
feeling froggy, go to 4.
He's with them too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To answer your question, because I went on a tangent, so dad mode for me is having that switch. It's that mental switch. And from a work, when we were doing the whole work from home thing, which you and I did for a brief time.
Yeah.
Prior to where you and I worked together, I only knew work from home.
Yeah.
It was work from airplane, work from hotel, work from home. So you may not have an office that you're driving home to or a stop sign, but you got a front door, presumably a back door, a garage, something. Go take a little walk. And then on the walk back in, walk into your dad mode. For me, it is, well, some of it's like get in, get your gear, let's go to baseball, right? But it switches from the work, ideas, obligations, things that are kind of working back here to solve, to not only what can I help teach, what can I help foster, but what can I show? Because a lot of people will say it's not what's taught, what's caught, which I fail miserably at a lot. I can say a lot of good stuff, and then they see it, and I'm like, this is going to be bad in 17 years. But that's where I really try to focus of what am I helping teach? What am I helping enforce? Where am I saying, like, let's just have as much fun as possible?
Yeah.
And creating that balance. And there's testing and iterating that goes along with it, because as soon as I think I've kind of like had an unlock, they've just done some mental leap, and now they're at a totally different mental level of what they can do, how they process, what they solve. And I've changed too. So it's a fun piece that we're tying it all together here, a little bow. We can't stop trying to do those things and being intentional, even if it feels like we're not making as much ground, because we are, whether we know it or not. We're teaching something, and we're going to fail, but they learn in that failure too.
Well, and realizing that especially because everybody grows, we grow, but they're growing too. And again, back to that cognitive or behavioral or what have you.
Yeah.
If you want to get all nerdy, like you can. That's what I do.
You can get nerdy with it.
I'm all about that.
I
Like,
do a dad podcast today. We're going to get nerdy with it.
if you're a boy dad, if there's a book called Wild Things, have you checked that one out? Like the art of like
Yes.
nurturing and raising boys, written by like 2 psychologists.
Yep.
That basically look at the different, here's what's happening in them right now from a mental developmental, here's what you can expect, here's what they need, here's the boundaries
Yep.
that they need to have. Like, if we can realize that in the same way that we're growing every day and they're a different person and growing every day and what they need is different and everything like that, like I think we give each other more grace.
Yeah.
Rather than, I don't know about you, this is probably me because I'm just, again, a piece of work sometimes. Dude, it's just, I mean, that's something that even right now I want to go and review, because, we're at those different jumps. And
Well, what I like about Wild Things as well is that it breaks it down into the years.
yes. Yeah.
And so it's like you can actually, it is kind of like a version of a manual that you can go and read. And it's like, okay, here's where we are.
What can I be expecting
Where
right
are we
now?
going?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been so good.
It's been really good. Do you remember the authors? Yeah, me neither. I'll put it in the,
Yeah, we can
the show
link it
notes.
over there. I don't remember the authors, but
Yeah.
it was insightful and again, I hope that I don't come across as anybody that has it figured out, that knows all the right things to do, and then I'm sitting here on the other side of figuring it out. Like, y'all, I'm in the trenches. Like, I'm with 4 and I'm seeing firsthand how different each one of them are from one another, that you come off the first one and you're like, all right, I'm figuring this out. And the second one comes along to that same age and you're like, been here, done that. And then their personality and strengths and weaknesses are different than the first one. You're like, okay, all right. And then the third one in our case comes around and, well, they're different than the second and the first. And now the fourth one,
Yep.
like, I think that there's something back to that grace side of like, you're always learning and you're going to think it's going to be going better. And a lot of the times it will. And I will say that, and this is total tangent, a total aside, anybody in the dad space, I joke that when we got married, there was always that one family member that shows up and says the things that they think are funny, but that are actually super unhelpful and super discouraging. Like, like I've got the car out back. You can still call it off now, And I was like, well, one, that's not helpful. That same person shows back up when you're about to have a child and they're looking at you and saying, hey, it's goodbye to your sleep. Goodbye to your freedom.
Yeah.
Your life is never going to be the same. I hope you had fun.
They're right about that one.
Like
Not the fun thing.
The sleep thing, like,
well, and your life
is never going to be the same. Yes, but in like a totally different way.
Yeah, not what you think.
And it makes me super frustrated for people like that, because some of the times the things that people that are about to get married or about to have a child need the most is somebody to look at them and say like, hey, it's going to be different than maybe you expect.
Yep.
And some of those differences are not bad. You're going to learn, it's going to grow, it's going to stretch you. But man, the people that tell the stories, myself included, the bad stories are usually the most fun. Like when you have to throw away rugs and lamps because there's so much poop on them, like that you can't do anything with them.
On lamps?
Oh,
you nailed it.
Oh, dude.
Okay.
We've seen some stuff, but like those are the fun stories to tell. And I've scared a lot of, non-childed coworkers in the past where I'm like, I'll keep these stories down. But the equally ones is when like unprovoked, your 5-year-old comes up and says, Dad, I love you.
Yeah.
Like without needing or wanting anything in return.
Yep.
Like there are far more of those than there are the crazy ones. And it's like, I wish people would tell those stories.
Yeah.
I wish people would look at those. And if you're a dad, if you're a mom, if you're somebody that's either new in the game or thinking about having a family, like I'll just say this from somebody you've never met before, those people's voices don't matter if they're saying those things to try to discourage you. Like anybody that's trying to discourage you about something that is like wonderful shouldn't be listened to on that.
And we don't know why they'd be discouraging. So it's, there could be
there's a lot of pain.
Wounds involved.
There's
there
usually
that
stuff that comes from, but like to look on the other side of somebody else that's about to have their own experience and to automatically just put that on them. It's like, man, that's wrong.
Yeah, that's
like
not
you
right.
shouldn't do that.
We're glad you're here though. If you're listening and you made this far in,
if you're listening this far,
like, hey, this go after it. And when you go after it, regardless of what community size you've got this community right here. And if you have questions, just throw them in here. I'll send them all to Brian.
Well, that's what I love, like that you have this, is that loneliness is such a thing. And we were talking about, leadership meaning so many different things, but like so many people, and I'll pick on dads right now because this is what we were talking about before here.
Yep.
Like, I think that there is it's easier to see in business, but I think it's just as insidious in homework and home life too, is that as the male leaders of our home, and I'm making some generalizations here, but like as the male leaders of our home, there is a certain weight of responsibility that we carry to do it right.
Yeah.
And there's a certain way of like, man, it's my job to instill the values, to lead my family, whether, you make money for your family or not. There's a certain level of, I've got to do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking at me. And if I've got sons, it's the way I feel like I'm responsible for raising 4 young men.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm still figuring it out on my own.
Right.
Like I'm still figuring out what does that mean too.
Yeah.
And to be able to step back and say, all right, it's going to be okay. We're daily learning how to get better. But from the community aspect, to be able to look and ask other people for help is not weakness. Like it's incredible strength.
Yeah.
To look at somebody and say, the thing that I'm trying to do matters so much to me that I don't want to get it wrong and I'd really like help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the world paints it as weakness, and it couldn't be farther from the truth.
I agree with you. It's a version of not asking for directions,
Hmm.
right?
It's pride.
Yeah, it's pride.
It's
We're gonna figure
arrogance.
it out.
It's fear.
And that's, we're all figuring it out because no two guys have the same combination typically of children, personalities, wife, family dynamics, all those things. But I can tell you through the conversations I've had through many of the other episodes that there's a common DNA that we all share. And that's the part that we want to tap in and say, like, hey, here's the common DNA that we can all not have to reinvent the wheel on, that we can learn from. And you had said a couple of times, like, well, I don't have it perfect. I'm not the expert. None of us do. That's why we have this.
Right.
Otherwise, it'd be super boring because it's like, here's what you do. Here's my course, 5 episodes. Just do this and you'll be fine.
Well, if they're here too, there's probably a common thread amongst us all that says, like, we want to get better.
That's what I love about it.
Like, this is not just well, I hope it goes well.
Yeah.
It's this matters too much to not do it well.
Exactly. It's a big deal. And especially now for a number of different reasons, that the evolution, even the perspective of men in the household and like all the different pieces of not being like an Al Bundy or Homer Simpson dad, right?
Sure.
We're all kind of the goofball dad, when most guys I know are not, right? But from a branding perspective, that's kind of some of the brand. We're kind of going to speak to the other side if you don't have a group to talk to, because a lot of guys don't. The stats on there aren't great, and the lone wolf rarely survives. So we don't necessarily need to go be that lone wolf, but we can learn from each other. And you had said, I'm not the expert. I love the analogy that is in the movie Catch Me If You Can. And they finally caught Leonardo DiCaprio was playing his character after he was, I guess it was a little while after he had been teaching a college course. They're like, how in the world did you go and teach a college course, like, successfully? And he said, it wasn't that hard. I just had to be one chapter ahead of the class. You're a few chapters ahead of someone that has 2 kids, maybe going to 3, or 3 going to 4. So there's something that you can take and be that expert through experience on for that person. And so I love taking that perspective. It's like, nah, I'm not the expert on all things.
I'm a fellow traveler.
We're a fellow traveler. We've been down this road. This one might look like it. So, come join. But
yeah, it's so funny you say that. Like, I was on with my business coach today, the guy that I'm working with. He used the same Frank Abagnale Jr. Catch Me If You Can reference into something completely different about being a step ahead of the psychology class, like not 6 hours ago. So this is, there's something here. I'm going to have to go journal on that, because there's 2 times in one day. There's something to that.
You went from Catch Me If You Can to Inception.
Yeah.
Like,
oh man.
You're in it.
Man, Leo.
Yeah. Your coach and I talked before this.
Yeah, right. Hey, he's going to be coming on. Just say that. It's going to blow his mind.
Well, with the final time that we do have, what are I have 2 questions for you. The first question is, this is the Skilled Dad, and I get a lot of people that ask me first time they see it. There's usually 2 responses. Like, one is, oh, what is it about? Like, there's an excitement around it, because I think there is, for some, a desire to be like, what is this? And I'm interested because there's a connection piece, so it's fulfilling something. The second part is, do you teach hard skills? Coming at you, not too long down the road. But in some ways, on a podcast, a lot of it is kind of the soft skill pieces, which is an important piece. But as a skilled dad, both the things we fix, both from a hard and soft skill perspective, that's what we're aiming to do, is help equip people to go and build things. What are something that you, whether literally or, figuratively, are building right now that you're excited about?
Man, I think there's a couple different ways that I can answer that. The first thing, and you've heard me talk about it a little bit, is I really do see that one of the most vital missions of my work and all that I do right now is raising 4 good young men
Mm-hmm.
that love Jesus, that, are contributing members to society, which is a simple way to say, but like that have moral principles, that have strong integrity and fiber, and I'm not trying to bake stuff into them that I'm not doing myself, but to me, to see and do that, to me, I see that as the biggest, most valuable thing that I'm building. I'm building a stronger marriage.
Yep.
That to me, like if there are rank orders of things, it is like my marriage and my boys. And with more time and more stronger drinks, it would be, I've seen just a lot of people that didn't see those things as vital pieces that they needed to be prioritizing.
Yeah.
And as a result, it got the remainder of what their energy was.
Mm-hmm.
It got disproportionate attention. And to me, it's like, that's why it needs to come first. The thing that in the last year, I'd be remiss of saying, but like it's building a business, and that's talk about daily figuring things out that you don't know. And, people have called it that chief everything officer, where there's things that you're coming into contact a lot with the fact that you're like, oh yeah, I don't like that. Or I'm not good at that, but it's
Right.
still a bigger piece of the puzzle. So like between my marriage, between my boys, between a business, I don't know if there's a whole lot of time. I mean, building friendships and maintaining relationships, but I'm never going to be the car guy. I knew that from like a long time ago. Like people are like, man, we just want to rebuild a car. Like,
Not the car guy.
I'm not the car guy.
That's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the car guy. You're building something else.
Yeah. I love people that are the car guy though.
Yeah. But it's good to know a car guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really good to know a car guy.
Yeah. But I'm never going to, if I ever come and talk with you and you're like, you know what, I am super jazzed about right now, I am restoring a car. You'd be like, you're doing that for somebody else. That's not you.
Hey, you gotta know that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's out of my league.
Yeah. You're building business.
Yeah. Building a business, building
Building the family. And building, I'm just gonna say it because this is what we're all doing. You're literally building the future. You have no better opportunity to make an impact on the future than the 4 little ones in your house right now.
Yeah. And
so,
I mean, and the weight of that can be immense. It can be insane. And the honor is just as cool. But yeah, that's what I'm building.
I love it. Last piece, last question. Biggest takeaway that you would leave somebody based on your experience with 4 kids, 8 through 10 months up to this point?
The biggest takeaway that I think I'd have that might be a little weighty, but I think it's worth saying, is that the impact that you make, the words that you say, the way that you respond, the things that you do matter. And, some people might be listening and being like, man, like what a way to finish out a conversation. Just kind of lay that on me. But I don't mean that in a, like, well, watch your P's and Q's, there is a level, and I think it's appropriate. It should be appropriately weighty, that the things that we're doing with our families and the things that we are instilling on them, that whole caught and taught thing that you just talked about.
Yep.
I think it's an appropriate way to say, like, it's important. And the words that you say need to be thoughtful. And my wife and I have talked a lot about the whole, because we're not perfect thing, and the not wanting to lose our cool. Sometimes we're better at it than others. One of the things that 100% of the time that we are putting in practice is that if that happens, we are apologizing and asking for forgiveness. And I don't know about you, that wasn't modeled. That wasn't something that I saw. I never looked at or saw from an adult to a child perspective that the adult would ask the child for forgiveness. And not that we're peers, but that my child and children, if I've wronged them, Dad makes mistakes, and I need them to see them. And I guess the same way that I just said that is that, you know, if I'd leave you with something is that your words matter, and your words matter.
I love it.
And it means a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Words matter. They're important, they're powerful, and they stick.
Yep.
Ooh. If people want to learn more about you, about what you do, where's a good place for them to find you?
Annie F. Downs would say on her podcast that she's embarrassingly easy to get in hold of because of all the social channels that she's on. And I would say it is ridiculously easy to not get in touch with me because I'm not on any social channels. I'm on LinkedIn to be able to talk professionally, but that's probably the best way if you're going to bump into me digitally. That's fine. Otherwise, just hang out in Middle Tennessee coffee shops and you'll probably see me somewhere.
Even better,
Yeah.
in the live.
Yeah.
That's the way to go.
Yeah.
Brian, I appreciate being on here, man. This was a blast.
Dude, this was good.
I have so much that's swirling in my head right now. I'm just going to go and journal about all of it.
Yeah.
But no, it was so fun. And hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Please. I would love that.
But the conversation doesn't have to start when the record button stops.
No.
Or
It'll probably keep going once we
mixed that
stop
up,
here. Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. And, you know, everyone, I appreciate you listening to Brian. So we'll look forward to having you on. But guys, I am so glad that you were on here and that you were listening at this point. Maybe you're not watching, but we're going to fill that one out. The camera's playing games. But the biggest thing about this podcast, you can always appreciate it, subscribe, all those things, because what that does is help this podcast reach other people that it could help. But most importantly, two things. If you know somebody that you think can learn from some of Brian's story, please share it with them, because the aim is to kind of help other people that might be in that zone at that time. The second thing is take in what you can take and apply to your life on your journey to becoming a skilled dad. My takeaway is we're not perfect. We're always learning. The only failure that I won't be able to tolerate for myself is if I were to give up. That to me is a failure in continuing to push forward as they grow, as I learn, and to go after the challenge. That's the fun part that we get to go do. So we look forward to seeing you on and talking to you on the next episode. You're listening to The Skilled Dad.